They say poverty rubs off with a dress like that. John's fiancé, apparently, didn't like the wedding dress I had made. He went as far as to trash it, posting it on the internet with bad reviews to tarnish its image. But he didn't stop there. He paid others to write a massive amount of negative comments about our company. Because of this, my company has been swamped with handling complaint calls. If left as it is, this could negatively impact our work. So, in an emergency meeting, I decided to start doing business with a well-known company. On the wedding day, to get back at John, I urged him to check his cell phone. He was shaken. What's happening? Contracts were being canceled en masse at his company. I couldn't let him off for demeaning my dress, troubling Alice, and spreading bad reviews about our company. We will thoroughly get back at John. My name is Ryan. I'm a man who just entered my 30s, working at a wedding dress manufacturing company. Just an average person. My growing waistline with age is a concern. I know I should exercise for my health, but work is too hectic right now. Especially since the wedding dresses I've been making have gone viral on social media in recent months, doubling the orders. Initially skeptical, starting SNS for the company turned out to be more effective than expected. Thus, while the company is growing its profits, I've been spinning in busy days. Thanks to this, my life revolves around thinking about wedding dresses every day. As a child, I had no interest in wedding dresses. Even when I did think about them, I assumed they were made by women. That perception changed due to an incident in the first year of middle school. Seeing my parents' wedding made me want to create attire that embellishes people's precious memories. My parents, being poor, couldn't afford a wedding initially, but managed to have one years later, thanks to the kindness of an elderly man living nearby. He was a wedding planner and wanted feedback on a new plan he had devised. That turned out to be the reason he approached my parents. Looking back, having a wedding without spending tens of thousands was a stroke of luck. Our family's financial situation is better now, but back then, I had to work right after middle school due to our hardships. I decided to work at a wedding dress manufacturing company after graduating from middle school because I couldn't forget how happy my mother looked in her wedding dress. During the season of vibrant autumn leaves, I was working in the company and spoke to a female colleague. Maybe we should change the color combination here a bit. Understood. I'm sorry to trouble you with this when you have your own work. It's no bother at all. The person I was speaking to is my younger colleague. Her name is Alice. She's sitting at her desk, intently staring at the computer screen. She's also in her 30s, a classmate from middle school. But after graduating, she went to a fashion-related vocational school. Since she joined a company after gaining various specialized knowledge at school, she was younger colleague, even though we were classmates. The client has specified a color for the lace, so we should consider that in our design, right? Right. The customer's request is paramount. It's a once-in-a-lifetime occasion, so we want to make a dress that they'll love. This reminds me of our middle school days. After school, we'd brainstorm various clothing designs together. When I was designing wedding dresses, others would mock me, saying, "Wedding dress, even though you're a guy," but she wasn't like that. When I asked why she didn't mock me, she said, "There's no gender in loving something." I was attracted to her in middle school, but my first love never came to fruition. It seems she has a fiancé. I've tried to learn a lot since I started vocational school, but I still have a long way to go. I'm taken aback by her voice as she speaks to me. She seems to be struggling with a big problem lately. She often repeating the same mistakes or forgetting what she needs to do. As a colleague working in the same office, I want to help her if I can, but it's personal, so I can't get too involved. "I wish you'd talk to me if you are having trouble," I said, but I wonder if that time will ever come. As I watch her and think, a bug flies. It flies in from nowhere, apparently wanting to get out. It keeps hitting the window glass. It's painful to watch, so I open the window to let it out, and then Alice speaks to me. "You're kind. You were helping a cat near the office the other day too," she says. She's talking about something that happened a week ago. I was about to head home when I heard a cat meowing from a tree near the office, so I got curious. Turns out, the cat couldn't get down from the tree, so I brought a ladder from the office to rescue it. It seems Alice saw me doing this. I don't think it's a big deal. That cat might have been able to get down from the tree on its own after a while, I say. But I think the cat was still anxious, so it was good that you helped it out early, she replies with a smile. Seeing her smile makes me feel a bit shy. While we're talking, her phone vibrates. Alice picks it up from the desk, checks the screen, and her expression darkens. She thought it was a message from a client, but it wasn't. "What's wrong?" I asked. After hesitating for a few seconds, she slowly starts to speak. "Well, my boyfriend has been saying some mean things lately," she says. "Mean things, even though he's dating you?" "No, not about me, about people at work." She has a fiancé named John, who's in his 50s and values education highly. He's seen as an elite director at his large company because of this. He often tells Alice not to associate with people who didn't go to college. By the way, John graduated from a prestigious university. I heard from a colleague that he used to only hang out with smart people in university. Because someone from our company graduated from the same university, I had heard about him before. Alice looks down at her phone, which vibrates again, with a complicated expression. Why would he say that hanging out with people with lower education makes you dumber? She wonders. Maybe she's received another message like that. Since there are quite a few people like me who started working right after middle school at our company, maybe he's worried about that. It's ridiculous. Just because someone didn't finish high school doesn't mean they are not a good person. You, me, and everyone else here are not bad people, she says. Alice. Sorry, please forget I said anything. I just decided on a wedding date, so maybe I'm just worried about everything. She says with a downcast look. I can't come up with anything comforting to say. Somehow, it doesn't seem like Alice and John are a good match, despite the age difference and differing values. Why did she decide to get married? As I ponder Alice and John's situation, time passes. During this time, I've made several wedding dresses. It was chaotic at first, but I've gotten used to it with experience. The number of orders hasn't changed, but now I can handle my work more comfortably. In the midst of this, Alice asks me for a favor. She approached me during the break with a formal attitude to talk about her wedding. So, you want me to design the wedding dress you'll wear, Alice? Yes, I've always wanted to wear a wedding dress designed by you. If I'm going to wear one for my wedding, I want it to be yours, she says. I'm flattered to hear that. It's genuinely satisfying to be appreciated. The responsibility of contributing to such an important moment in my classmate's life is a big pressure, but it also motivates me. However, I wonder if she has discussed this with her fiancé, John. It seems Alice read my expression. I've talked it over with John, and he agreed to let me decide if I'm so willing, she says. If he's okay with it, then. Alice genuinely wanted to wear a dress I designed, but there seemed to be another motive. I didn't want him to keep looking down on people from our workplace. I thought if he saw a beautiful dress, he might change his mind, she explains. So that's why you asked me to design it, I see, I said. When Alice reached out and grabbed my hand, I couldn't help but feel a jolt of surprise. It reminds me of the innocent feelings I had for my first love in school. Of course, I'll pay for it. Could you please design it? She asks hesitantly. But I wanted to do everything, not just the design. I believe the best results come from one person handling the entire process, and I wanted to do everything I could for her. No, I'll take care of everything. You're my friend, and I've been looking out for you. I want you to wear something truly special, I insist. But I think your modesty is a virtue, but is not what you need right now. This is an important moment in your life. You shouldn't have any regrets, I told her. Alice has always been like this. Choosing the cheapest item even when I offered to treat her, or only taking one piece of candy when she could have taken 10. Just because she didn't want to take away from others. There's no need to hold back for your wedding. It's once in a lifetime, I said. You're right. Could I ask you to do it, Ryan? I confidently assure her, you can count on me, tapping my chest. It's an honor to contribute to the start of my dear friend's new life. I should be the one thanking you, I said. Thank you so much, Ryan, she replied. So, from that day, in addition to my regular work, I started on Alice's wedding dress. Though it was challenging, the motivation was different because I knew the person who would wear it. Creating something for someone I know felt fresh since I had never experienced it before. Completing this wedding dress would teach me a lot for my future work. But at that time, I didn't know. Alice was enduring a lot for a marriage she didn't want. And I didn't realize she didn't eat much during breaks. That day, she went home and had a long talk with John about the wedding. Later, I heard John didn't want to invite us, her colleagues, to the wedding. He said people with lower education are surely lacking in class, and Alice had a hard time convincing him. The dressmaking process went smoothly, and a few months later, it was finished. When Alice tried it on, it fit perfectly. She looked the most radiant I had ever seen her. In a company changing room, wearing the newly made wedding dress and looking at herself in the full-length mirror, Alice's face lit up. It's wonderful. Thank you so much, Ryan. I'm glad you like it, I replied. It's so beautiful, I'm sure he'll have to let go of his prejudices. Thank you for all your hard work, she says, tears in her eyes. Seeing Alice tear up with gratitude, I chuckle and say, you're overreacting. This is how she reacts even before the wedding, so I can only imagine what the actual day will be like. But I don't feel bad at all. It's a fresh feeling to have someone I know appreciate something I've made for a personal occasion. Afterward, Alice carefully folded the dress to show it to John. After bringing it home, she planned to try it on in front of her fiancé again. When Alice first asked me to design the dress months ago, I had a feeling everything might just work out. But it seems I was too optimistic. That night, a storm of negative reviews swept through an internet site. The photos posted were of the dress I made for Alice, but they showed it dirty, with bugs and trash on it. This sparked people, who weren't even customers, to write all kinds of untrue things, causing the company's reviews to spiral down. Arriving at work the next morning, my colleagues were furious over the comments on that site. Complaints about not being greeted when passing by, or that an employee is interacting with someone with bad behavior. What does that have to do with our work? Are these even true? The person posting claims they ordered a dress, but that's a lie. The photo they posted isn't one of our dresses. The names mentioned are from a different wedding dress company. These are employees from another company. It seemed the situation had worsened overnight. As I was trying to figure out what to do, Alice arrived at work. I'm so sorry, everyone. It was John. She had already seen the reviews. She was apologizing profusely, her face pale. No, Alice, it's not your fault. You were so happy yesterday, you couldn't have expected this to happen, I said. Though the colleagues accepted her apology, allowing the moment to pass, we couldn't let the company's reputation continue to fall. That afternoon, we decided to cancel one appointment to gather in the meeting room and think of a response to the reviews. So far, we had received only a few complaint calls, but they were starting to increase, potentially delaying our usual business. In the serious atmosphere, we brainstormed strategies together. During this, Alice seemed determined to take responsibility. "This is my responsibility. I have an idea. Please let me handle this," she said with a strong resolve. No matter what we said, she wouldn't be swayed. So, I decided to invoke the idea of shared responsibility. "Then, I'll help too," I said. "A senior should bear the burden of a junior's mistake." I couldn't let her face this alone. As a colleague, I need to teach a lesson to anyone who bullies my dear colleague. First, we needed to understand why Alice was engaged to John in the first place. The more I thought about it, the more I felt something was off about the two of them getting married. The next day around noon, I visited a well-known company in the area to solve the issue. A renowned company familiar to many residents here. Upon explaining my visit at the reception, I was directed to a spacious conference room. Inside, a man in his 60s waited for me. Mr. York, the company's president. The person who looked at me with a sharp gaze was one of the adults who had watched over me since I was a child. I often visited Mr. York's house as a child, where he would entertain me. "It's been a while. I hear you are having some troubles." Mr. York greeted me with a gentle smile, happy to see me. Despite my happiness, I knew this wasn't the time for reminiscing due to my current situation. "It's been a long time, actually. I've been facing some challenges with a colleague." I began, summarizing recent events. Mr. York listened intently to my explanation, offering his full attention. After I finished speaking and took a moment to breathe, Mr. York began to speak. "Firstly, as a neighborly elder, I must say you've had it tough. When you enter society and start a business, you're bound to encounter troublesome individuals occasionally," he said. "Thank you. Have you experienced something similar, Mr. York?" "I've lived for 60 years and managed a company. Naturally, I've had my share of experiences." Living a long life surely brings a variety of experiences. From Mr. York's heartfelt tone, the hardships he faced were evident. He sighed deeply, shaking his head before addressing me again. "I'd like to help, but as someone who leads a company, I can't act on personal feelings alone. You understand that we can't spend time on mere consultations, right?" "Of course," I replied, acknowledging his position. Mr. York had always been kind, but he also understood the importance of discretion. Now that we were both adults in society, I couldn't simply rely on our neighborly relationship unconditionally. I prepared myself to make a proposal to Mr. York. "Mr. York, I'm interested in doing business with your company," I said. "Let's hear the details." Typically, such matters would be handled by the sales team, but today was an exception. I had explained the situation to my company's staff, and it was decided that I would handle this negotiation. Partly to resolve Alice's issue, and also for mutual benefit. Our sales department had long aimed to engage with Mr. York's esteemed company, but had never succeeded. Therefore, a change in approach was decided upon to make a new appeal. I proceeded to explain our proposed business terms to Mr. York. "That's the proposal. Would you please consider it? This company deals with high-quality thread. Using this thread to create wedding dresses would undoubtedly result in superior products." Considering Alice's situation, it was clear that establishing a connection with a renowned company would be beneficial. "Understood. Let's proceed with a deal between our companies," Mr. York agreed. "Really? Thank you." While I was relieved at the success, questions lingered. Why had it worked this time, when all previous attempts had failed, after just one meeting? It was unlike Mr. York to make decisions based on personal feelings. I hate to ask, but why have you decided to have a deal with us now? Our company's attempts at negotiation had previously been unsuccessful, I inquired. It's because I appreciate individuals who work hard, he replied. Excuse me. Mr. York, with a smile, explained to have puzzled me. From our conversation earlier, I sensed a great passion for wedding dresses. It was clear you spend your days deeply engaged with them. Perhaps that's why. Though I had indeed been preoccupied with dresses to recent business, I wondered if that was really enough. Sensing my thoughts, Mr. York continued. It's simple, yet important. You've demonstrated dedication to providing quality products to your customers by earnestly engaging with the dresses. That's what I deemed you a trustworthy business partner. Having no previous sales experience and never having been evaluated in such a manner by a business partner, I felt awkward yet flattered. Filled with happiness and embarrassment, I managed to say, "Thank you." After finalizing preparations for a comeback against John, the wedding day finally arrived. Though not listed on the invitation list, Mr. York was also invited to the venue. However, there was no sign of him yet. Perhaps there had been some trouble. While I wondered what to do next, I witnessed Alice doing something astonishing. Normally, she should have entered the venue after the ceremony had started, but she appeared in a tattered wedding dress. It was the dress I had made, but it remained as it had been after being defaced by John. The guests began to murmur among themselves. Soon after, John arrived at the venue, dressed as a groom, looking flustered. His attire was perfectly normal, making the contrast with Alice's appearance strikingly evident. "Alice, I was looking everywhere for you, and to find you here." It seemed he had been searching for her, panting as he loudly scolded her. "Why are you wearing such a dress? What happened to the one I prepared?" But Alice, undaunted by John's attitude, stared back at him defiantly. This seemed to intimidate him, showing his anger. "I'm sorry for not wearing the dress you prepared, but I had always planned to wear this dress, hadn't I? But that dress was made by a high school dropout. It's not suitable for someone as beautiful as you. I want to wear the dress my colleague made for me at our wedding," Alice stated firmly, though her feelings didn't seem to reach John. "Before you defaced it, that dress was beautiful, regardless of the maker's education background." Hearing Alice's words, he scoffed at the dress disdainfully. "Such a dress only brings poverty. I disposed of it so that you, being kind-hearted, wouldn't have to wear it." "How could you say that? It was made with so much effort." "So what? This isn't child's play. Effort means nothing if the customers aren't satisfied." The venue fell silent as the two argued. Among those gathered at the venue, there likely wasn't a single person who wasn't focused on these two. Alice narrowed her eyes and glared at John. He hadn't expected such defiance from a bride just before her wedding. John faltered and stepped back. "Even if that were true, it doesn't justify ordering a dress from someone else when you've already asked someone to make one." "What?" "I looked into it after you defaced Ryan's dress. I found an order for a wedding dress from another company on your computer. You never intended for me to wear Ryan's dress." Hearing Alice's shocking revelation, John's face turned pale. "No, it's a misunderstanding. Listen to me," he pleaded. But she showed no mercy. Alice raised her voice so everyone in the venue could hear her clearly. "I asked you multiple times if you had any specific requests for the dress, yet you, who said I could do as I liked, criticized the finished product. Isn't that wrong?" "Stop, don't say any more. It's almost time for the wedding." The atmosphere in the venue was changing. Those who had been expressing their congratulations were now looking puzzled, and some looked John with disdain. Alice continued to reveal facts unknown to the guests. She exposed John's deliberate sabotage of the dress, his negative online reviews, and his attempts to bribe many into giving my company bad ratings. When John, at his limit, tried to silence Alice by force, Mr. York arrived. "It's not becoming of a groom, about to be married, to forcibly silence the bride," he said, his voice calm but carrying. Mr. York, with a commanding presence, approached us with measured steps. "Sorry, Ryan. I'm a bit late from the time I said I'd be here. I couldn't overlook a child who got hurt on the way," he explained. "It's okay, that can't be helped," I replied. "I appreciate your understanding. It reminded me of when you were young, bringing back some nostalgic feelings." Mr. York shared, lightening the tense atmosphere with his casual conversation. "You're not recalling any embarrassing stories, are you?" "Don't worry. I only remember the time you wet your bed and cried after your mother scolded you," he joked, blurring the line between sincerity and humor. His words seemed to relax those who had been anxiously watching the unfolding drama. While it was important to stand up to John, we didn't want to leave the guests with any trauma. I had to thank Mr. York's experienced handling of the situation. Regaining my composure, I stood in front of the astonished John, who was asking, "Why is Mr. York, the president of a renowned company, here?" "What, you got something to complain about?" "No, but I think you should check your phone right now. Is your company okay?" "What?" Caught in the midst of chaos, John likely never expected to hear such a thing. Stunned, he started checking his phone with a look of confusion on his face. He turned pale seconds later. "What's happening?" He was likely receiving notifications of contract cancellations from various companies, all orchestrated by Mr. York. "Your company has been undermining rivals in various ways, but it seems your behind-the-scenes efforts were too sloppy," Mr. York revealed. "No way." I felt bad for the victims, so I meddled a bit. "Though, for you, it might not seem like much. Just an old man conducting some investigations and sharing the results with those affected by unjust bad reviews." Mr. York's company excels at monitoring the movements of other companies. Perhaps this is influenced by his own belief that he possesses no special talents. Claiming no knack for trends or business opportunities, he is compensated for his shortcomings by scrutinizing the actions of other companies. Maybe that's why he's so concerned about young people who are struggling despite lacking talent. Mr. York fixed his gaze on John as if testing him. "Well, what will you do?" Had John sincerely apologized there, Mr. York probably would have forgiven him. Alice, though not marrying John, would likely not have grown to dislike him any more than she already did. But clad in his groom's attire, John chose not to do so. He twisted his face in anger and rebuked Alice. "It's your fault. You're the one who went crying to Mr. York. Do you never consider reflecting on your actions, John? I'm not wrong, am I? What's wrong with taking down a rival? After all, in this world, whoever takes advantage of someone wins. Working hard only makes you a fool." Overwhelmed by anger, John seemed to have lost himself. As he advanced on Alice, I intervened to stop him. "I shouldn't have engaged myself to someone like you." "How can you say that? Don't you love Alice?" "Love her? If I knew she was such a nasty person, I wouldn't have dated her." His abusive words were unbearable. I didn't want to leave him there any longer. "If I had known it would come to this, I wouldn't have cornered your parents' company." Then I remembered the story Alice had told me after our meeting in the conference room. Her parents ran a company that suddenly started receiving bad press. It seems John reached out to help Alice and her family then. That was the reason they started dating, but the initial cause was unimaginable. "I thought if I did you a favor, you'd easily fall for it. I was deceived. I didn't know you'd be such a hassle." I couldn't stand to listen any longer. I grabbed John's hand, trying to drag him out of the venue. "Don't hurt her anymore. The situation you're in isn't anyone else's fault but your own doing. John resisted, trying not to be thrown out, but then Mr. York roared, "Enough with the poor Grace." A loud voice that seemed to come from his gut made the air tremble. The voice echoed throughout the venue, making even someone who hadn't done anything wrong like me want to shrink away. If you can't admit your own mistakes and blame others, you can dream on about growing, go back to the start and come back again. Having never been yelled at in his life, John sat down with a pathetic heap in a daze. With his courage gone, he crawled out of the venue. Afterward, John broke off his engagement with Alice. The last time Alice was seen, she looked haggard from dealing with her company's bad reputation. It seems the wedding incident had long-lasting effects, and a year later, John's company went bankrupt. Having lost his job, he moved back to his rural hometown and rarely went outside. Rumor has it, he spends his days feeling small and insignificant. Meanwhile, we began trading with Mr. York's company. We were able to offer even higher quality dresses. With more work coming in, we became busy again but managed to get by with new hires. Alice, carrying a big trauma from her relationship with John, gradually started to regain her energy. Lately, she's been showing more smiles, and it seems like her heart's wounds might fully heal sooner rather than later. If she decides to have a wedding, I'd like to make her dress. Assuming she agrees. If I said I was your first love, would you date me? What? Just kidding. Please continue to support me. Yes. Become a dependable colleague and help me with work. At that time, I couldn't have imagined that a few years later, she and I would get married. And she would wear a wedding dress as my wife.